this video, I'm going to go over how to put together this double-breasted jacket and uneven hem skirt. It's basically a lapel collar with princess seams and a straight shirt. It's pretty easy to make. Printed the pattern at 100% and I'm testing to make sure the square is 1 inch. And then these two pattern pieces have to be taped together. So I'm just cutting one of the pieces, match it to the other one, matching the little symbols, and I'm just going to tape it, or you can glue it. And then just cut out the rest of the pieces. This is the layout that I have on my fabric. This piece is on the fold, but I'm gonna wait to cut these pieces out first so I can save some fabric. The collar, the upper collar is single, so I'm doing that on a single fabric, and this is also a single piece of fabric, so I'm putting that to the side for now. I'm going to mark my pattern pieces, and the important pieces to mark are the collar part. We're going to mark, and I'm going to do this with a, you can use it with a chalk or whatever marking tool you have. Mark where the collar ends, that little corner there. It's important to mark it also, and mark your collar seams. The rest of it, I usually just mark the back of the sleeve so that I don't get confused. There's not a lot of marking that needs to be done. But I'm going to start the sewing. I'm going to put the facing pieces to the side, and I'll attach the front pieces together and the back pieces. And then after we have our front and our back attached, we'll attach them at the shoulders. And when I sew, I sew my seam first and then I serge it. You can zigzag it or use a pinking shears or whatever finishing you want to do on your seams. For this front seam, on the curved side, there's a little space there. I usually just match the two ends rather than having to deal with notches. So you just clip on the straight side. Just make some clips. Make sure that you don't go into the seam line. And I'm kind of eyeballing it. And then it matches perfectly. So I'm going to turn my collar back, right sides facing each other, and sew this end all the way down and this end. Now I'm just going to clip the corner here. And you can clip your seam as well. And I'm going to flip it around. And then you can press it again if you'd like. Now the next step is I'm going to attach the collar on this part here. just show you on the paper. That's why we need to mark the pattern. And I just eyeball it because I've done this so many times. So we're gonna match this part, this dot to this dot, and sew from dot to dot. Like when I sew the collar, I'm gonna sew like this. And making sure that you have your collar the right side, the right side facing up, and the under collar is on the bias. So this is how I would place my collar. And I'm gonna mark my dots on the pattern piece. And I just put a pin through it. And this little dot, the first at that corner there, that's the most important one, because that's where you want to make sure that the collar matches. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the collar. Just making sure that these two pieces are in between the dots. So we're gonna place, let me just do one side first, because you'll do the same thing for the next side. I'm using my pin to show where I'm going to place my collar. It's a little funky here. So I'm gonna sew from this end up to here, up to this point right here. This is where the collar is placed, and this is the point where I want to sew to. Very important, because then that's going to be our pivot point. Now that I sewed that section, this section here, I'm going to make a clip up to that corner of that sewing point. And then I'm going to turn this around and continue sewing the collar from there. So basically you make a little corner there. And I'm going to sew it now only up to here, from there to here, because I want to do something else with this part of the collar. So basically from here to the shoulder line. Now I sewn that section, and I'm just going to flip it over to make sure that I did it right. And there you have your little little lapel done. And once you know that you have it right, you can clip it. You can clip that little corner and press it. Now we're going to do the same thing for the other side. This is what you should have so far. The middle part is still open. And now I'm going to serge the sides of the facings. These sides. So when my facings are prepared, I serge the sides and I folded the shoulder part down. You can serge it as well, but my serger just kind of forms a little, the part is so small that I rather just fold it under. So before I do the collar stitching, I sew this part of the facing, and I'm going to mark this line because this is going to be the fold line. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to do my understitching in the correct places. So once you sew your seam, you're going to mark where the collar is going to fold over and make a clip. And do your understitching. So the collar goes this way, so we don't want to do, we want to do the understitching on the correct side. We don't want to do it where it shows. So from the top end, you're going to fold your seam towards this side, towards the actual fabric side, because that's going to be under, and top seam that line up to the where you're going to fold your seam the other way. Once you've done that, and I'm going to mark it with a pen, for the bottom part, you're going to fold the seam towards the top part. You're going to fold the seam towards the bodice, and on the bottom part, you're going to fold the seam to the facing. So top stitching on the bodice side for the top part, and then understitching, not top stitching, understitching, and that's so that it folds over nicely. You can skip this step if you want, but I like to do it. And then the understitching on the lining side for the bottom section. So once you're done with the understitching, it's going to roll nicely on the top and the bottom. So now that the understitching is done, we can proceed to do the collar part. Just fold your seam. Sew to the point from here to here, then pivot, make a snip and pivot and continue your collar up to the shoulder part, making sure if you didn't serge that top part, just fold it under so it looks nice. And like I said, I'm gonna sew it from this side so I can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna sew this seam right here, make my snip, and then continue up to the shoulder part. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to snip the collar, the upper collar, so that I can sew the under collar on in the middle section to the sewing line there, to the little corner there, making sure that you're not going to cut into your seam line. And the point is that we're going to do is now we're going to attach the rest of the collar to the middle section, but only the under collar. And you can pin it or baste it, whatever is easier for you. So we're gonna sew that part in. Now that I sewed the collar in, and I sewed it like this, pushing this part up, we're gonna clip the rest of that seam at the corners where the facing meets the collar. Being careful not to clip into the seam line. Or clip anything else that you don't want to clip. It's kind of tricky because it's so small. And very hard to see because this fabric is so busy. I picked the wrong fabric to do a demo. At this point, you can trim your collar seam if you want. Making sure not to cut the top collar. And now what we're going to do is this is going to face down, and then this seam is going to face up. And because we did a snip there, it's easy to split them. But maybe for the next one. So now I'm going to push the collar seam inside. Like so. And I'm going to stitch it I'm gonna go ahead and machine stitch it down on the back only. Stay stitched along the armhole, and I made a gathering stitch on the sleeve, and this is so we can gather it slightly, very slightly, to form the upper part of the shoulder. So it has a little shape like that. And then I'm going to pin the sleeve to the armhole and make snips on the curve. To fit the arm in. And this is my back. So So make sure you put your sleeve with the back with the 2 notches. I just put a pin to mark it. And then we're going to set the sleeve in. Right sides facing each other. And I usually just pin it on each end. You can also notch the middle if you want, but I just eyeball it. And then I just pin it all the way around. When I sew it, I'm going to place the flat side down so I can sew on the flat. When you're sewing for doll clothes, it's really easy to sew everything as flat as possible. So I'm going to put the flat side down, and at the sewing machine, I'll just bunch this up like this, the curved part, and then just sew it along. That way I make sure I don't catch any ripples. It is the sleeve all set in. And what I'll do is, I'm not going to put this through the serger because I have a really hard time with the curves, this steep curves. So what I'll do is I'll zigzag it all the way around to finish the seam. Both my sleeves are set in, and I zigzagged. And then I serged the end of the sleeve and sew the hem up. Now the next step is to sew your sides. The side seams are sewn, and now we're going to flip the facing around to match right sides together. And I'm going to close it. And then after I close, I do the 1/4 inch seam up to the end of the facing. On both sides. Then I'm going to go ahead and serge the entire bottom with the facings. So this is what the bottom edge looks like, and we're going to turn this around. And then I'm going to press the hem allowance up and sew it. It's all finished except for the buttons or snaps. And notice, because of the understitching, the collar naturally wants to fold at the section where it's supposed to. So now we're going to put this aside and start working on the skirt. For the skirt, attach the yoke pieces on the sides, and then we're going to sew this seam, understitch it, and then sew the side seams. After sewing the skirt yoke, I'm going to put that to the side and start working on the bottom part of the skirt. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'll serge the entire square on both sides. And so the next step is to place your pieces like this. I made a stay stitch all the way around the inner circles, attaching the two lower panels together, and I'm going to go ahead and clip all the way around, and then I'm going to start joining the yoke. Okay, I pinned the skirt to the skirt yoke, and I found that it's easier to start pinning on the sides first and then accommodate the center here. And for the back, make sure you overlap the yoke by about 1/4 of an inch so that you can button it, and then pin it in the center and then accommodate the sides with the pins. So now we're going to sew all the way around. So here's the skirt all sewn. I gave it a little shot of steam to give it a shape so it's not sticking out. And now I just have to get rid of all my thread tails. And all that's left to do with this outfit is just attach the buttons. And I hope this is helpful as always.